She was standing outside my office building in heels she clearly regretted, checking her phone like it owed her an apology. I had known Amber for about 8 months at that point. We worked at the same logistics firm on the 4th floor of a glass building on the east side of Austin. She handled client accounts. I kept the operations running. We shared a coffee machine, a wall of windows that looked out over a parking garage, and the kind of easy friendship that builds slowly without either person noticing until it is already there. That Friday evening, I was heading out late, laptop bag over one shoulder, keys in my hand, ready to disappear into a quiet weekend. She was in the lobby when I got to the elevator, dressed differently than I had ever seen her. Dark green dress, auburn hair falling loose around her shoulders, small gold earrings catching the light. She looked like she was going somewhere that mattered. She was also staring at her phone like something had gone wrong. Her Uber canceled, she said without looking up. The driver just canceled on me. I have a date in 20 minutes and I am standing here in heels on a Friday night with zero backup plan. I told her I would walk her. She finally looked up. It is 2 blocks, Joel. I know where it is, I said. She studied me for a second like she was trying to figure out if I felt sorry for her or if I actually meant it. I meant it. She slipped her phone into her bag and said, "Okay. Fine. Let us go." We walked those 2 blocks slowly because the sidewalk near the old hardware store is uneven and her heels were not built for uneven. She talked about the date the whole way there. She had met the guy through an app. His name was Greg. He worked in finance. He had listed hiking as a hobby, which she said was either a good sign or something every person in Austin put on their profile to sound interesting. I told her it was probably both. She laughed at that. Not a polite laugh. A real one, short and surprised, the kind that happens before a person has time to decide if something is actually funny. When we got to the wine bar, she stopped at the door and turned to look at me. She had this expression I had not seen before. Not nervous exactly. More like she was standing at the edge of something and was not completely sure she wanted to step forward. "Thanks for walking me," she said. "Have a good time," I said. She nodded once and pushed through the door. I stood there on the sidewalk for maybe 3 seconds longer than I needed to before I turned and walked home. I made dinner, watched half of a documentary about deep-sea fish, and went to bed at a reasonable hour like a person who was not thinking about auburn hair and a dark green dress. I was not very convincing. My apartment on the east side was the kind of place that was fine in every way that did not matter. It had good light in the mornings, a kitchen big enough to actually cook in, a couch that had survived 2 moves. But it was quiet in the specific way that reminds you it is built for one. No extra coffee mug in the cabinet. No second pair of shoes by the door. Just the hum of the refrigerator and whatever I put on in the background to make the silence feel less deliberate. I had moved to Austin from Tucson 6 years ago, chasing the idea of a bigger life. I found steady work, a decent apartment, a few good friends scattered across the city. What I had not found, or maybe what I had kept at a careful distance without admitting it to myself, was the kind of connection that makes a place feel like somewhere you actually belong instead of somewhere you happen to live. I was good at my job. I was good at showing up. I was not always good at letting things matter. My phone buzzed at 9:47. The text was from Amber. 4 words. Coming out early. "You up?" I sat up from the couch. I typed back. "What happened?" 3 dots appeared. Then, "Nothing bad. Just done. Can you walk me home?" I grabbed my jacket before I finished reading it. She was standing at the corner half a block from the wine bar when I got there. Heels in her hand, bag pulled across her body, the kind of expression that is not quite disappointment but is not far from it either. The dress still looked good. She just looked tired. We started walking without much preamble. She said the date had been fine. That was the word she used. Fine. He had been polite, asked reasonable questions, laughed at the right moments. Nothing offensive, nothing wrong. Just 2 people sitting across from each other with a bottle of wine between them and nothing real passing between them at all. Like a job interview, she said. Pleasant one, but still. I did not say anything. I just walked beside her and let her talk. She asked about my evening and I told her about the documentary. She asked what it was about and I said deep-sea fish and she said that sounded like exactly the kind of thing I would watch on a Friday night. I told her she was not wrong. By the 3rd block she had slowed down. Not because she was tired. More like she was thinking about something she had not decided yet whether to say out loud. You ever go on a date and realize halfway through that the only person you actually wanted to talk to that night was someone you already knew? She said. She was looking straight ahead when she said it. I did not answer right away. We reached her building. It was a 4-story brick place with a blue door and a potted plant out front that she had mentioned once was the building manager's pride and joy. She stopped at the bottom of the steps and turned to face me. She looked up. The streetlight caught her face and she looked different than she did in the office. Softer maybe, or just more honest. Like the version of herself she kept filed away during business hours had found its way to the surface. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. Next time, she said quietly, "Can it just be you?" She did not wait for me to answer. She said goodnight and went inside and the blue door clicked shut behind her. I stood on that sidewalk for a long moment, the city humming around me, and I thought about all the things I could have said. I thought about them the entire walk home. I did not sleep well that night. Not because anything had gone wrong. Nothing had gone wrong. That was almost the problem. Everything about that walk home had felt easy and honest and like something I had not let myself have in a long time. And now I was lying on my back in a dark apartment staring at the ceiling trying to figure out what to do with it. By 2 in the morning I had talked myself into 3 different explanations for what she had said. She was tired. She was venting. She meant it as a friendly thing, the way people say I would rather stay in with someone comfortable than go out with a stranger. That was probably all it was. She had just had a disappointing evening and I happened to be the person she called. I believed this for about 6 hours. Saturday came and went. I went for a run along the river trail, bought groceries, cleaned the apartment in that restless way you clean when you are actually thinking about something else entirely. I picked up my phone twice to text her and put it back down both times. I did not know what I wanted to say that would not make a simple thing complicated. Sunday morning I was standing in my kitchen making coffee when my phone lit up on the counter. It was Amber. Farmers Market on South Congress starts at 9. I am going in 20 minutes if you want to come. No pressure. I looked at the clock. It was 8:42. I was there by 9. She was standing near the entrance in a light blue jacket and jeans, her auburn hair loose, holding a paper cup of coffee from the vendor just inside the gate. She smiled when she saw me, and it was the same smile from the sidewalk 2 nights ago, real and unguarded and aimed directly at me. We walked the whole market together. No agenda, just moving slowly from stall to stall, looking at vegetables neither of us needed and trying samples of honey and hot sauce and bread from a woman who called everything life-changing in a way that made it actually believable. Amber bought a bundle of herbs she said she was definitely going to use, and we both knew she probably would not. I bought a bag of peaches because they were there and they looked good. We talked easily. About the market, about the neighborhood, about the way Austin had grown into something louder and more expensive than either of us had signed up for. She told me she had grown up outside Knoxville in a town small enough that everyone knew your car as well as your face. I told her about growing up in Tucson, the dry heat, the wide skies, how I had left chasing something I was never entirely able to name. What did you find? She asked. Decent tacos, I said. Eventually. She laughed and bumped her shoulder into mine and we kept walking. We did not talk about Friday night directly, but it was there in the space between sentences, in the way she would glance over when she thought I was not looking, in the way I kept finding reasons to walk a half step closer than necessary. Some things do not need to be said out loud to be understood. They just sit in the air between 2 people and wait. We grabbed breakfast at a small place on the edge of the market, a counter spot with no more than 8 seats and a menu written on a chalkboard. She ordered eggs and sourdough toast. I got the same. We sat next to each other because that was the only way there was room, and at some point her knee was resting lightly against mine and neither of us moved away. Here is the thing about Amber that I noticed more in that hour than I had in 8 months of sharing an office. She listened like she meant it. Not the polite kind of listening where someone is quietly building their next sentence while you talk. The real kind where they are actually inside what you are saying, following the thread of it. When I talked about Tucson, she asked follow-up questions that showed she had actually heard me the first time. When I trailed off, she did not rush to fill the gap. She was also funnier than I had fully registered before. Not performing funny, Not trying to impress funny, just genuinely sharp in the way she saw things. A dry observation here, a well-timed pause there. I was paying more attention than I had allowed myself to before, and it was doing nothing to simplify my weekend. By the time we left the breakfast place, the morning had opened up into something warm and unhurried. We walked back toward her building without saying that was where we were headed. 2 blocks from her street, she slowed down again, the same way she had Friday night. I have been thinking about what I said, she told the sidewalk. I waited. She looked up. I meant it, but I also did not want to make things weird if you did not feel the same way. You are one of the only people at that job I actually like, and I would rather have what we already have than lose it over something I said after a bad date on a Friday night. She said it all in one breath, quickly, like she had been rehearsing it and wanted to get it out before she reconsidered. I stopped walking. She stopped too. I looked at her standing there in the morning light, holding her bag of herbs she would probably forget about by Tuesday, waiting for me to say something that would either make this easier or harder. I said, I walked across town at 10 o'clock on a Friday night because you texted me 4 words. I did not do that because you are someone I work with. She looked at me for a moment. Something settled in her expression. Like a breath she had been holding finally let go. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. We stood there on the sidewalk, the city moving around us, and I thought this is the moment, and then I also thought do not overthink the moment, and so instead of overthinking it I reached over and tucked a strand of hair back from her face. She did not move away. That Wednesday I texted her about a taco place on Congress I had been meaning to try. She replied in under a minute. She said 7 o'clock and added that she was bringing her appetite and her honest opinions, and I should be prepared for both. I told her I would try to survive. I was already looking forward to it more than I had looked forward to anything in a while. She ordered the Al Pastor tacos and ate 3 of them before I finished my first one. The place on Congress was narrow and loud in a good way, the kind of restaurant that does not try too hard because it does not need to. Wooden tables, mismatched stools, a chalkboard menu on the wall with half the items already crossed off by 7 in the evening. We sat near the window and the street outside moved slow and golden the way Austin does on a Wednesday night when the week has not quite broken yet. Amber was different at dinner than she had been at the farmer's market 2 days earlier and different again from how she was at the office. Looser somehow. She had changed out of work clothes into a rust-colored top and dark jeans, her auburn hair falling around her shoulders, and she talked with her hands when she got into something she cared about, which turned out to be often. She told me about her first apartment in Austin, a studio above a barbecue place where the smell came through the vents every morning, and she had genuinely not minded. She told me about the job she had almost taken in Nashville, a good offer from a good company, and how she had turned it down on a gut feeling she could not explain at the time. I asked her if she had ever regretted it. She thought about it honestly instead of answering fast. Not the decision, she said. Just the wondering. You know how you make a choice and then you spend a while looking sideways at the door you did not open. I knew exactly what she meant. I told her so. We ordered another round and the conversation moved without effort, the way it does when 2 people have quietly figured out they are safe with each other. She asked about my work, not the polite version people ask at parties, but the real question underneath it. Whether I actually liked it. Whether it was what I had meant to do with myself. I told her the honest answer, which was that I was good at it and it paid well, and some days that felt like enough and other days it felt like a very comfortable place to hide. She nodded like she had felt that before too. Halfway through the second round she set her glass down and looked at me with the kind of directness she usually saved for client calls. There is something I want to ask you and I need you to answer it straight, she said. I told her to go ahead. Why are you still single, she said. And I do not mean that as a compliment wrapped up in a question. I genuinely do not understand it. I laughed, mostly because I was not expecting it. The honest version, she said. Not the deflection. I looked at her for a moment. Then I told her. I told her about the relationship in my mid-20s that had ended not with a fight but with a slow drift I had seen coming and done nothing to stop. I told her how I had convinced myself it was better to hold things loosely so they could not hurt as much on the way out. How I had gotten good at being present for people without ever quite letting them close enough to matter in the way that kept you up at night. She listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished she was quiet for a second. Then she said, "That sounds exhausting." "It is," I said. She reached over and took the last taco from my plate without asking. I let her. We walked along the river path after dinner without planning to. It was one of those spring evenings that feels like an apology for winter, warm enough to move slowly, cool enough to stay outside. The water caught the city lights and held them. She walked close enough that our arms brushed every few steps and neither of us adjusted. She told me something then that she said she did not usually share early on. 2 years ago she had been close to serious with someone. Not engaged, but close to it. The kind of relationship where you start doing the math on the future without saying it out loud. It had ended when she realized she was working harder to make it look right than to make it feel right. She had stayed 6 months longer than she should have because she was afraid of being the one who gave up. "That is not giving up," I said. "I know that now," she said. Took a while. We stopped at the railing above the water. She leaned against it and looked out at the river, and I looked at her without trying to hide it. She turned and caught me. Neither of us said anything for a moment. The city filled in the silence around us. The low sound of traffic and someone's music drifting from across the water. I leaned in and kissed her slowly, like a question I already knew the answer to. She kissed me back like she had been waiting for me to ask. When we pulled apart, she was smiling. Not the managed kind she used in meetings, but the unguarded kind. The one I had been cataloging without realizing it for months. We walked back to her building without rushing. At the blue door she stopped and turned around. "I am not looking for fine," she said. "I want you to know that." I told her I was not looking for fine either. She nodded once, satisfied, and went inside. I walked home with the kind of feeling that does not have a clean word for it. Not happiness exactly, though it was close. More like relief. Like something that had been held at arm's length had finally been allowed to land. I slept well that night for the first time since that Friday. But here is the part one did not see coming. The part that arrived 11 days later on a Tuesday morning before I had even finished my first cup of coffee. I was at my desk going through shipping logs when my manager called me into the small conference room at the end of the hall. He closed the door, which he only did when something was either very good or something that required a closed door. He sat down across from me and said the company had been approached about a contract opportunity in Portland. A big one. And they wanted to send someone up there for 4 to 6 months to manage the transition on the ground. He looked at me the way people look at you when they are about to say your name. "They want you, Joel," he said. "We need an answer by Friday." I sat there in that small room with the hum of the air conditioning above me and thought about the river path and a rust-colored top and a kiss that had taken months to arrive. Friday was 3 days away that I did not tell Amber right away. Not because I was hiding it. Because I needed 24 hours to figure out what I actually wanted before I handed someone else the weight of it. That is the thing about decisions that involve other people. You owe it to them to show up already knowing your own answer, not to use the conversation as a way to find it. I spent Tuesday evening on my couch with the Portland details open on my laptop. Good contract. Real money. The kind of professional step that looks obvious on paper. 4 to 6 months, my manager had said, with the possibility of extension if things went well. The company would cover housing. I would keep my position here, technically, but everyone in that conference room knew that possibility of extension was doing a lot of quiet work in that sentence. I closed the laptop at 10 and stared at the ceiling. Wednesday morning I got to the office early. Amber arrived at 8:45 with 2 coffees, the way she had started doing a few times a week without it ever being officially decided. She set one on my desk and dropped into the chair beside me the way comfortable people do, easy and unhurried, like the space already belonged to her a little. I told her about Portland before she had taken her second sip. She did not react right away. She looked at the cup in her hands and turned it slowly. "When do you have to decide?" she asked. "Friday," I said. She nodded. She did not tell me what to do. She did not make a face that asked me to read something into it. She just sat with it for a moment, which I had come to understand was how she handled things that actually mattered to her. Then she said, "Tell me what you want. Not what makes sense. What you actually want." I looked at her sitting there in the morning light with coffee in her hands and her auburn hair loose around her shoulders, and I thought about how 11 days ago I had kissed her by the river and how the days since had been the least complicated I could remember in years. Not because nothing happened. Because what happened felt worth being present for. I do not want to go to Portland, I said. She looked up. I want to stay here, I said. And I want to see where this goes. And I am not saying that because I am afraid of the opportunity. I am saying it because for the first time in a while I am more interested in what is in front of me than what might be somewhere else. She was quiet for a second. Then she set her coffee down, leaned over, and kissed me once, short and certain. Okay, she said. Tell them no. I emailed my manager that afternoon. Polite, professional, grateful for the consideration. He called me in and asked twice if I was sure. I told him I was sure both times. He accepted it the way good managers do without making it a thing and moved on. Life did not pause to applaud the decision. It just kept moving, which is how you know a choice was right. The right ones tend to settle quietly into the day rather than announcing themselves. Things between Amber and me did not rush forward after that. They deepened, which is a different thing entirely. Rushing is about speed. Deepening is about weight. About two people slowly trusting each other with the parts they usually keep filed away. She started keeping a spare jacket at my apartment. Not because we discussed it. Just because she left it there once and it stayed and neither of us moved it. I had a drawer at her place by early June, socks, a couple of shirts, a book I was working through slowly. Small things. The kind that mean more than they look like they should. She cooked on Friday nights when we stayed in. Not elaborate meals, real ones, the kind made with whatever was in the fridge and a playlist she had strong opinions about. I handled the dishes because she hated dishes and I did not mind them. We had figured this out without a conversation, which felt like its own kind of milestone. One Saturday in late June we were at her place after a slow afternoon at the farmer's market. The same South Congress one where this had all quietly started. She was on the couch with a book. I was in the kitchen making coffee. The radio was on low, some old station she liked that played songs from before either of us was born. Everything was ordinary and quiet and entirely good. She looked up from her book and said, I used to think I had to earn the calm. Like it only came after you had checked everything off the list. I brought her coffee over and sat down beside her. Turns out, she said, sometimes it just shows up. Walking you home from a bad date. I laughed and she leaned into me the way she did when she was not performing anything for anyone. There was one more moment that happened that summer that I keep coming back to. It was a Sunday evening in July, and we were sitting on her back steps watching the last of the light leave the sky. She had her knees pulled up, hands wrapped around a glass of water, and she was quiet in the easy way that does not need filling. She turned to look at me and said, I am glad I texted you that night. I said I was glad she had too. She smiled and looked back at the sky. Neither of us needed to say anything else. Some things arrive fully formed, without needing a lot of words to hold them up. What we had built over those months was not loud or complicated. It was honest and steady and made of small true things, walks and farmers markets and tacos on Congress and one question asked on a sidewalk on a Friday night that started all of it. I had spent years keeping things at a careful distance, telling myself that holding loosely meant staying safe. But Amber had walked through that without trying to, just by being the kind of person who says the real thing out loud and waits to see if you are brave enough to say it back. I had been brave enough. Barely. But enough. We stayed on those steps until the sky went dark and the city lit up around us, and it felt exactly like somewhere worth staying. Not because everything was perfect, but because she was there and I had chosen to be there too, and for the first time in a long time that felt like more than enough.